a huge parasitic leech with rows of sharp teeth that's been swimming around for millions of years. A strange fish that produces mass amounts of slime. These creatures seem like they're from another time, and in a way they are. First up, we've got the coelacanth. This fish is seriously cool, but also a little creepy looking. What makes it so interesting is that it was thought to have been long extinct, gone for 65 million years alongside the dinosaurs, but then in 1938, fishermen off the coast of South Africa pulled one up, and boom, you had a live and kicking living dinosaur. These fish have been around for 360 million years, and honestly, you can kind of tell. They're huge, sometimes growing over 6 feet long. They have thick lobed fins that make them look, I don't know, just something really ancient looking about them. And here's something really cool. They seem to be a kind of link between sea creatures and land animals. The way their fins move is a bit like legs of amphibians, which hints that they could be a distant relative to the first creatures that crawled onto land. Coelacanths are still found today, mostly off the coast of Madagascar and around Indonesia, but there's no denying that they are one of the creepiest and coolest survivors from the past. The lamprey. These creatures are definitely one of the most terrifying things still swimming around today. There are lots of different types, but the one most people know about is the parasitic lamprey, which looks like a giant horrifying leech, and that's basically exactly what it is. They've been around for hundreds of millions of years, and they're as creepy as they sound. The lamprey is a parasitic species. It latches onto its victim with its circular sucker-like mouth, which is lined with rows and rows of sharp teeth, and once attached, it starts rasping away at its prey, eating its flesh to access all the red stuff inside, leaving these huge, ugly scars on their victims. Lampreys are some of the most primitive fish alive today. In fact, a lamprey fossil dating back 360 million years was found in 2006, making it a living fossil that scientists have used to study ancient evolution. The sea lamprey has earned a reputation as a pest in places like the Great Lakes in North America, where it kills many of the fish that it attaches itself to. Next on the list, we have the pygmy right whale. This is one of the rarest whales you can find on Earth today, and they've been around for about 23 million years. They've only been spotted alive and at sea a handful of times, and because there aren't a large number of specimens and DNA for the animal to pull from, there's still a lot that science doesn't know about them. Exactly what they eat and how they behave is still a bit murky. They're very small, for whales anyway, only measuring about 21 feet in length. Yeah, only, but for a whale that is pretty small. They live in the cool waters of the southern hemisphere. They're said to have formed from baleen whales millions of years ago, and as rare as they are now, things may get even worse. As oceans continue growing warmer, the population of these whales is going to drop even further. The nautilus. The nautilus is a mollusk that's lived in the sea for 500 million years, thriving during a time when the continents were still taking shape. Originally, there were 10,000 different species of this animal, but today only a few survive in the western Pacific Ocean and the coast of the Indian Ocean. Chambered nautilus, a specific type of the creature, use their 90 retractable suckerless tentacles equipped with are called chemonosensors to hunt for fish, crabs, and lobsters. The tentacles help them pick up food scents in their environment. Using a beak-like mouth, they pry open tough shells to access their prey. They also regulate the amount of water and air in their shell through an internal tube called a hyponome. These are such strange but really beautiful looking creatures. The striped markings on them, just very eye-catching. Hagfish. These are one of the most bizarre and ancient creatures still alive today. They've been around for over 300 million years, and just to put this into perspective, this means they were swimming around before dinosaurs came about. These things are often called slime eels. As for why, I'll get to that in a moment. Now, they aren't actually eels, and some scientists even question whether they should be classified as fish. One of the most fascinating things about the hagfish is its unique anatomy. They do have a skull, but they completely lack a spine. They also have 2 brains. I don't think I've ever heard of a creature with 2 brains before. That's crazy. Hagfish spend their nights scavenging for food, feeding mostly on the carcasses of larger animals that sink to the ocean floor. They have a strong sense of smell, allowing them to locate food sources. In 2011, researchers made a pretty interesting discovery. Hagfish can actually absorb nutrients through their skin and gills. This makes them one of the only vertebrates known to have this ability. It's especially useful when food is scarce. It just increases the surface area area available to absorb nutrients. But as promised, of course, we gotta get to the reason behind the slime eel nickname. Well, these things have the ability to produce this thick, sticky slime that can clog the gills of other fish, making it nearly impossible for them to be eaten. This defense mechanism is so effective that hagfish have virtually no natural enemies, making them one of the ocean's most resilient animals. The lancetfish has a very prehistoric look. They got these sharp teeth and that big sail dorsal fin on the top, and this is its scientific name, Alepisaurus ferox. If I didn't know any better, I would think that was a dinosaur. These fish can get pretty big too. Some can grow up to 2 meters or about 6'6". They can be found in nearly all oceans except for the polar regions. They're aggressive hunters, feeding on smaller fish and squid, but they've also been known to eat members of their own species when no other options are around. I'd never heard about these guys until today, but I'm really glad that I've discovered them. They may be on my list of top 10 favorite fish now. I love the way they move through the water too. The sturgeon is another ancient creature that's been around since the early Jurassic period. Now, these fish are mainly known for being the source of caviar. They're unfortunately endangered today thanks to overfishing. Now, I didn't know how big these guys can get though. Some species of sturgeon can grow over 20 feet long, making them as large as a great white. Sturgeon feed on small animals from the ocean floor, and they're generally pretty harmless to humans, but just because of how massive they are, they can pose a threat. Unintended, but still, there have been cases where sturgeons have leapt out of the water and landed on boats, causing injury or, in rare cases, even death. The sawfish. Now, this is a pretty remarkable survivor from the Cretaceous period, and they are unfortunately also critically endangered today. We can find them in both saltwater and freshwater. It's even been spotted up to 100 kilometers inland in rivers and creeks. They can get pretty huge, growing up to 7 meters or 23 feet long. They do look like strange sharks, but they're actually more closely related to rays. You can kind of tell by their belly part. They look a bit like a stingray. Also, they have a really funny mouth. Anyway, their most distinctive feature is what can only be described as a chainsaw on their snout, which is not only a weapon, but also a highly sensitive organ, covered in what are called electrosensitive pores. The sawfish can detect prey even with poor eyesight. These things are generally pretty peaceful, despite having, a chainsaw on their face, but they can get dangerous if they're provoked. Fascinating fossil discovery also revealed that prehistoric sawfish were likely food sources for the massive carnivorous dinosaur Spinosaurus. They found vertebrae from a sawfish lodged in one of their teeth. The alligator gar. It's not actually an alligator, but a massive fish from the gar family, and it's one of the largest freshwater fish in North America. Found mostly in the southern United States, they're ancient creatures that have been around for about 100 million years. They can grow up to 10 feet long and weigh over 400 pounds. With their thick armored scales and their large fang-filled mouths, they do look more like a crocodile than a fish, or an alligator than a fish. There are plenty of photos of fishermen holding up these things, and sometimes it takes 2 fully grown men to hold one. In one incident, a man dangling his feet off a dock had an alligator gar latch onto his foot and try to pull him under the water. Now, fortunately, he did manage to escape, but there's a very good chance that these fish might have done this before, and that's the reason behind several mysterious drownings. And finally, we have tadpole shrimp. Picture a prehistoric sea-dwelling creature, and something like this is probably exactly what's going to come to mind. Tadpole shrimp are ancient crustaceans that have existed for an incredibly long time, dating back to the Triassic period, around 220 million years ago. They belong to the Notostraca group and have kept a remarkably unchanged appearance throughout their history. They're kind of crazy looking. They have this really cool shield-looking carapace that covers their bodies. Now, despite their ancient origins, they've continued to thrive in the modern world. They're adept at surviving in environments with fluctuating water levels, often appearing in habitats prone to temporary drying. They have a unique survival strategy during rough conditions too. In response to drought or other not so favorable environment factors, they enter a state of dormancy, forming cysts that protect them until conditions become suitable again. This is a large part of what's helped them endure for as long as they have. What you're seeing here is a fish trying to avoid the deadly tentacles of a Portuguese man-o-war. They're really cool looking creatures, but their stings are powerful enough to kill some fish and in rare cases even humans. If their venom travels to the lymph nodes, it can cause airway blockage, shortness of breath, cardiac issues, and again in extreme cases even death. In every case though, their stings are incredibly painful. Anything that gets that guttural, almost animalistic scream out of you, that's gotta be incredibly painful. This video was posted to the channel Aqua di Leo, who'd been spearfishing with a friend when a wave pushed a Portuguese man-o-war right over his head. He went on to write in the description, "I didn't even see it, but immediately felt the tentacles on my neck and it sent me into a world of pain. As soon as I lifted my head out of the water, I felt it push up against my lips and cheeks, and the tentacles latched onto my mask and neck." He finished off with a pretty important word of advice: never dive alone. Great whites may be terrifying, but have you ever heard of the megamouth shark? Definitely sounds pretty ominous. This is some rare footage of one. Now, it may not look all that scary here, but how about this image? There we go, that's more terrifying. Just imagine if that thing was alive. These are very elusive sharks. In fact, they were only discovered in 1976. Not only can they get really big, up to 18 feet or about 5.5 meters long, but as you can probably tell, they're very odd looking and have one of the largest mouths in the animal kingdom. Huge, wide, and lined with hundreds of tiny teeth, designed for filtering plankton from the water. Now, unlike most sharks that are sleek, fast hunters, the megamouth moves slowly and feeds by swimming through the water with its open mouth, so it may not be the most threatening of sharks in practice, but they do look pretty terrifying, and I'm still sure you wouldn't want to get in one's way. A much more dangerous shark though is the Oceanic white tip. There's no escaping these guys. They're found all over the ocean, including the Bermuda Triangle, but they don't go very far north or south, preferring warmer waters, and they can be very aggressive. They aren't very picky about what they eat either. They're scavenging, opportunistic feeders, and if you're ever stranded out in the middle of the ocean, you'll probably be dealing with these things if you're out there long enough. Oceanic white tips have been responsible for tons of attacks during shipwrecks and plane crashes, especially when injured survivors are leaking out their BLOOD into the water. They just love that. It's not that they prefer humans over anything else, they just go for whatever's most vulnerable and easy to catch. So if a plane crashes or a ship sinks, the shark may not hesitate to swim in and check out the scenes, circling the area before picking off the survivors. Imagine, if you will, that you're flying over the ocean on your way to Florida or Puerto Rico, anywhere around the Bermuda Triangle. It's been a peaceful flight. In fact, you're almost nodding off as you stare down at the ocean below. But then you spot something a little strange. A shadow is looming in the water, and it's getting bigger and bigger. It starts creating ripples, which get more and more violent. People around you are starting to notice now. Passengers are even starting to audibly panic, and before you can even react, a colossal figure leaps out of the water, its enormous jaws snapping open, and to your horror, your tranquil window view is soon enveloped by this ginormous beast's gaping maw. And then that's it. You and everyone else in the plane just gone, dragged into the depths of the ocean down below. You've been what I'm gonna call Bermuda beasted. We all know what makes the Bermuda Triangle so intriguing are all the ships and planes that have gone missing while flying or sailing through it. There are tons of theories as to what could be happening, and one of them is that there's this massive undiscovered monster gobbling up boats and aircraft dubbed the Bermuda Beast. While sailing the waters of the Bermuda Triangle, you may just hear the eerie high-pitched calls of a rare and endangered bird called the Bermuda petrel, also known as the cacao. Now, as you can see, this is a pretty adorable animal, but aside from being cute, there's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about with these things. First of all, these are endangered birds, so endangered that for years it was thought to actually be extinct, until it was rediscovered in 1951, nesting on a tiny remote island in the Bermuda Triangle. And then there's the cacao house haunting, high-pitched calls that echo over the water. To some, they sound almost ghostly as they reverberate. Their white feathers also give them a bit of a ghost-like appearance as they soar through the air. For this reason, they're sometimes referred to as the ghost bird. Frilled sharks are what are known as living fossils. It's one of the creepiest, most ancient-looking creatures to ever lurk in the deep. These things have long eel-like bodies and sharp needle-like teeth arranged in rows. It's been around for millions of years, and its appearance has barely changed since the time of the dinosaurs. This is why they're known as living fossils. And when you see one, it's easy to understand why it looks like it could have been designed to haunt the darkest corners of the ocean. With its long, tooth-filled mouth, a frilled shark can grab onto prey with this eerie, snake-like motion. It's not a fast swimmer really, but it lurks in the deep and then ambushes fish and squid. Scorpion fish can be found throughout the Indo-Pacific. This is actually a family of fish containing many different species, like the stonefish and lionfish. First off, let's talk about the stonefish. This one is a real nightmare if you're walking around barefoot in the shallow water. These fish are masters of camouflage. They look like, nothing more than a rock or a pile of seaweed, blending perfectly with the ocean floor, but if you accidentally step on one, you're in trouble. The spines on its back inject potent venom that can cause excruciating pain and even paralyze you. In some cases, it can be deadly if you're not treated quickly enough. Then there's the lionfish, which is a pretty cool looking animal, terrifying in its own way though, and it's even worse if you get near it. This fish has long spiny fins that look like razor sharp daggers protruding out of their bodies. It's not really an aggressive fish, but if you get too close, again, its spines can inject a painful venom. Look how strange this creature looks when it eats. This is a goblin shark, pretty apt name. Goblin sharks have these long, flattened snouts that look, to put it bluntly, pretty ugly. The other cool thing about them though is that, as you just saw, their skin is almost translucent. But the real horror comes from its extendable jaw. The goblin shark's jaw can literally shoot forward to snatch prey like some freaky mechanical contraption, grabbing onto whatever fish or squid it's after. Pretty disturbing stuff. Now, luckily these are deep sea dwellers, typically found in waters between 200 and 1200 feet deep, so it's not something you're likely gonna bump into while snorkeling. Now, we talked about the creepy looking big fin squid at the top of the video, so seems fitting to close out with another type of squid, the giant squid. A seldom seen creature lurking in the depths of the ocean, once thought of as a mythical creature. The giant squid is one of the most incredible creatures ever discovered. It can grow up to 40 feet long, possibly even bigger, making it one of the largest invertebrates on Earth. Tentacles that could wrap around your boat like a snake, massive suction cups that could hold on to anything that gets too close. Basically, they're the real-life versions of the kraken. These creatures rarely come up to the surface though, only venturing into shallower waters occasionally, so they're not the easiest animal to study, which is why they were placed in the realm of myth and legend for such a long time. For centuries, sailors and fishermen would tell tales of sea monsters, stories of enormous tentacled beasts dragging ships under the waves, and it's very possible that at least some of these stories were based on real encounters with the giant squid. In the serene waters of Seljordsvannet in Telemark, Norway, there's a legend that has existed for over 2.5 centuries. The existence of a mysterious sea creature dubbed Selma. The legend of Selma has been passed down through the generations, a part of the folklore for locals of the area, but back in 2012, Selma took a step closer to reality when a 17-year-old named Lisbeth, while on a family trip, managed to capture what are hailed as some of the best images ever recorded of this creature. Possibly. During a family outing, Lisbeth captured a pretty good video. Gunvor Vefal, Lisbeth's mother, had her own encounter with Selma in 1995, and her mother saw it back in 1970. She never came out publicly at the time with her story though, thinking she'd just get laughed at. In the footage, you can see some sort of long object colliding gracefully beneath the surface of the water with approximately 40 to 50 distinct humps. It's a pretty solid piece of footage. What do you all think though? Misidentified animal or genuine sea serpent?
The anglerfish is truly a sight to make sore eyes. I mean, this thing is freaky, and so are its mating habits. You can quite easily differentiate the male anglerfish from the female by its size. Males tend to run quite small, generally an inch max. Females are much larger, generally measuring up to 24 inches. When a male and female anglerfish decide they would like to engage in adult activity, things get weird. The male anglerfish will actually bite the female anglerfish and become something called a sexual parasite. Slowly, over time, the male anglerfish will actually fuse with the body of the female until only its reproductive organs remain. Said organs will then fertilize the female, and in just 3 weeks, the mom and what remains of the dad anglerfish will welcome their new babies into the world. Now before we move on, let's take one last look at this female anglerfish, and more specifically the thing coming out of her incredibly bulbous head. That thing is called a stalk, and it is tipped with a bunch of little bioluminescence which the female anglerfish will use to attract prey in the pitch black deep sea, where she resides at an average depth of around 3,000 feet.
The Skaha Lake monster. Jim LaRoque, a resident of South Okanagan, Canada, stirred quite a buzz about 5 years back with his alleged sighting of the Ogopogo, the mythical lake monster of Okanagan Lake. LaRoque and his children were by Skaha Lake in Caledon, BC on June 1st of 2019 when he noticed a peculiar disturbance in the water. Describing the incident, he stated he heard a whooshing sound and observed ripples on the lake. His son, who is on a paddleboard nearby, reportedly saw a flipper emerge from the water. LaRoque managed to capture footage of what he claimed to be this massive serpentine creature. The footage was so shocking it even showed up on the news. Canadian news, to be fair, not much goes on up here. He estimated it to be about 120 feet long, with 7 fins moving in sync, resembling oars of an upside-down dragon boat. The Ogopogo legend itself has deep roots dating back to the 1700s, with First Nations people sharing tales of this mysterious water creature lurking in the waters of Lake Okanagan.
Alright, this thing looks straight up like it just walked straight out of your nightmare. It's called the Magnapina squid, and it was first recorded by a camera attached to an oil rig in Texas. This is an incredibly elusive animal, and so catching one on film is a major accomplishment. While these squids aren't as big as giant squids, they are incredibly long, with some growing to be more than 20 feet in length. The largest one discovered to date was 21 feet long, but since we have only ever seen a handful of these guys, it's entirely possible that there are some Magnapinas out there 2 or 3 times that size, which really would make them the longest squid in the world. Although, as I said, this guy has only ever been spotted a handful of times before, the fact that it was once spotted at a depth of 20,381 feet makes it the deepest occurring squid genus known to man. And while we don't know exactly what this animal's long appendages are used for, scientists assume they act kind of like fishing lures, grabbing any edible organisms they can while they drag them along the sea floor at a depth that would literally crush you or I. Fascinating.
Coelacanths are incredibly fascinating creatures because they're actually prehistoric animals still swimming around in the ocean to this day. As cool as they are though, they're also kind of creepy looking. They kind of have like zombie looking eyes. What's crazy about them too is that they were actually thought to have gone extinct along with the dinosaurs, but in 1938 they were rediscovered and found to still exist. An animal that was believed to have died out about 65 million years before was actually still around. Pretty cool. These fish are believed to have inhabited the earth for 360 million years, and it shows. They're pretty big, growing sometimes over 6 feet in length. They also seem to be a bit of a missing link between the creatures of the sea and land-dwelling amphibians, because a coelacanth's 4 fins move in a way that almost resembles fore and hind legs.
The fang-toothed fish is generally found at a depth of about 16,404 feet, which has earned it the distinction of deepest fish known to man, and its appearance might just earn it the distinction of most disturbing. But hey, to each their own, right? Although it generally resides in some of the deepest depths known to man or fish, the fang-tooth has been seen at depths of just 6.5 thousand feet, which is where it was first discovered by scientists. Out of the few fang-tooths spotted just far, 6.6 to 7 inches seems to be a pretty pretty standard body size, but again, we've only seen a handful, so they could be way larger than previously assumed, which is a very scary thought. Now, in case you haven't noticed, this thing has massive teeth. In fact, it has the largest teeth to body ratio of any known fish, to the point where the fangtooth is actually physically incapable of shutting its own mouth. In other words, it's a yappa. Yappa yappa. If you're Gen Z, you get that reference. It's also incredibly fast, with a bite that appears to be way worse than its bark. It's been observed lunging at its prey of shrimp, fish, and squid at incredible speeds, and impaling them on its razor-sharp teeth, chopping them up and swallowing them down in less than a few seconds. Good day to be me, bad day to be a shrimp.
The Humboldt squid has a few nicknames: the jumbo squid, jumbo flying squid. In Peru, they're called pota. They're big and not the friendliest. Pretty freaky squids. For starters, these things have barbed tentacle suckers. Even if you don't know what barbed tentacle suckers are, you just get this sense that they're not good. This is a large predatory squid found in the eastern Pacific Ocean. They have long, powerful tentacles equipped with suckers, each lined with sharp, barbed teeth. The beak of the Humboldt squid is also sharp, allowing them to tear into the flesh of their prey. So they're pretty intimidating as is, but even worse, they travel in large packs. And when I say large, I'm not talking about like 10. These packs can consist of thousands, and they're very coordinated, so they can overwhelm larger prey pretty easily. And just like any nightmarish creature, they only come out at night. At least that's when we're most likely to encounter them. They come closer to the surface at night to feed. During the day, they're found much deeper down. So, moral of the story, don't go swimming around in the eastern Pacific Ocean at night, or you might be swarmed by thousands of barbed tentacled jumbo flying squids.
Residing at a depth of about 1,640 feet, we have the frilled shark, which is, like the coelacanth, considered to be a living fossil due to the fact that its origins date all the way back to the Carboniferous period, which took place between 359 to 299 million years ago. The frill shark is named after its gills, of which it has 6, which each boast a distinctive frilly margin that kind of looks like a decorative trim. But that's not the only thing that sets this deep sea dweller apart from the others. You see, while most sharks have two completely separate sets of symmetrical gills on either side of their body, the frilled shark's frontmost gills actually connect underneath its throat. Some other things you might just find interesting about this animal are that, just like the great white shark, this frill shark has 25 rows of razor-sharp, backwards-facing teeth on both its upper and lower jaws. Unlike the great white shark, the frill shark attacks like a snake by lunging at its prey. This gray aquatic dinosaur also has a gestation period of up to 3.5 years. 3.5 years. Seriously, thank God I'm not a frill shark.
Now, we can't do a list like this without mentioning the giant squid. I mean, giant squids are some of the largest invertebrates on Earth. Adults can reach lengths of up to 43 feet, at least from what we've seen. There's still a lot of mystery to these things, and some researchers say they could grow even bigger than that. They live in the deep ocean at depths of 3,000 to 6,500 feet. They're very elusive and live so deep down they're very rarely seen. Giant squids have the largest eyes of any known animal, measuring up to 10 inches in diameter. Their eyes allow them to detect faint traces of bioluminescent light in the deep sea. They have long tentacles equipped with suckers lined with sharp teeth. The 2 long feeding tentacles, along with the 8 shorter arms, help them capture and consume their prey. These things aren't just scary in terms of size either, they're also carnivorous, hunting fish and even other squid species. They've even been known to eat small sharks. What's so amazing about these creatures is that for centuries they were only talked about in stories told by fishermen or sailors. They were treated like any other mythical creature. It isn't until fairly recently that one of these things were actually captured on camera. Because of where they live and how hard they are to catch, studying giant squids is a tough task. Most of our knowledge about them comes from specimens that have washed ashore or from examining stomach contents from creatures that have eaten them. Sperm whales. That's basically the only animal big enough to mess with these things.
And of course, we have to include the Goblin shark, a truly unsettling specimen with a protruding mouth that extends outwards to catch its prey. The Goblin shark was discovered by scientist David Starr Jordan in 1098, however the species itself is actually believed to be around 125 million years old. The animal boasts 26 long, thin, spiky teeth on their upper jaw and 24 on their lower jaw. The more I learn about this thing, the more I want to stay as far away from it as possible. Lucky for me, this Goblin shark is generally seen at depths of 4,265 feet, but unluckily for me, it enjoys late night swims incredibly close to the surface of the water, which I will be keeping in mind the next time I want to take a late night dip in the heart of the Pacific, Atlantic, or Indian Ocean.
So this is a very strange video. Supposedly it comes out of Kenya, but I've heard it coming from other parts of Africa too, so I'm not 100% certain. In the video we clearly see what looks to be a young mermaid-like being washed up on a beach surrounded by onlookers. It's clear that the supposed mermaid is actually on camera. I mean, this is a real person. The question is whether they're a real mermaid or just a person with a fish attached to their lower half. And yeah, that's almost definitely the case, but what creeps me out about this video is why it exists. I just have so many questions about this thing. There's just something very uncomfortable about this footage. Why was this created? Who is the person they've attached to this fish? Are they okay? And just what the hell is the music the uploader has added to the footage? It doesn't fit at all, and it just makes the whole thing even more strange and unsettling. During World War II, strange sightings were reported in the key islands of Indonesia, where Japanese soldiers stationed there encountered what they described as mermaids, or mermaid-like creatures. Local villagers familiar with these creatures called them orang ikan, or manfish, and they were said to stand at just under 5 feet tall, with pink salmon-colored skin, spikes along their spine and neck, and a mouth resembling that of a carp. Instead of a fishtail, they had long arms and frog-like legs, both ending in talons. So they're basically the creature from the Black Lagoon. The soldiers claimed to have spotted the creatures both in and out of the water. One story came from a troop exploring a lagoon who saw one of the things leap onto a rock, facing the soldiers and making a gurgling, burping noise. As another creature swam swiftly towards them, the soldiers fired shots at the rocks and water, but the creatures vanished before their eyes. Later, Sergeant Tero Horiba asked villagers to notify him if one of the creatures was ever captured. Eventually, the village chief presented a lifeless specimen to him. Creature about 4'9" tall apparently matched the description perfectly. These photos are pretty famous in the world of deep-sea cryptids. They were taken by a man named Jeff Leitcher in 1998. He was a diver who claimed to have captured the first documented proof that mermaids exist. It all happened about 20 minutes off the coast of Kauai when Leitcher was diving with a group. While swimming with a pod of dolphins, he noticed what appeared to be a woman swimming alongside them. What caught his attention was that she was keeping up with the dolphins. Then the woman suddenly leapt out of the water, and Leitcher realized she had the lower half of a fish. The woman jumped twice before disappearing in the water, leaving the group completely stunned. Then, about an hour later, while Leitcher was photographing some underwater life, the same mermaid-like creature supposedly brushed up against him as she swam by. He quickly snapped a few pictures just as she turned around. I feel very lucky that I'm the one to finally prove to the world what people here have known for half a century. The Kaiwi Point mermaid is real, Leitcher said. In 2009, something strange started happening near Kiryat Yam, Israel. Dozens of locals claimed to see a mermaid off the shore at sunset. Over time, more and more people reported spotting the creature, describing it as resembling a young woman who would frequently visit the beach and perform tricks in the water. As the sightings gained more and more attention, the Israeli government even got involved, and they offered a $1 million reward for anyone who could provide proof of the mermaid's existence. No need to capture it, just an authentic photo would do. NBC sent a film crew to investigate. They stationed themselves at Kiryat Yam Beach, both above and below the water, filming around the clock. And one night they claimed to have spotted a human figure dipping into the water before disappearing. The research crew did their best to track the mermaid down, but they couldn't pinpoint its exact location. The footage was sent to Coastal Oceans Research in Los Angeles for further analysis. Michael Schacht, the center's director, reviewed the footage and said although it was impossible to unequivocally determine the figure in the footage, it still remains a viable option. In other words, it could be the real deal, but it's not definitively proven. In 2012, Zimbabwe found itself caught up in a very strange case involving mermaids that had workers fleeing from their dam sites in the country. Water Resources Minister Sam Sipepa Nkomo addressed the issue during a Senate committee meeting, revealing that mermaids had been scaring away government workers at dam sites, or that's what workers had been saying. According to Nkomo, the workers were so terrified by these supposed creatures that they abandoned their posts, refusing to return. Nkomo shared that traditional chiefs had been called in to, quote, perform rituals to exorcise the mermaids believed to inhabit reservoirs. The mermaids, often described as female creatures with fishtails, were said to frighten the workers by allegedly pulling people under the water. In response to the workers' fears, Nkomo had even attempted to hire white personnel, assuming that they wouldn't be familiar with the mermaid legends, but they too then started reporting strange sightings and would refuse to work on the project. Now, there was skepticism from some, obviously, including Minister Nkomo, who thought that maybe the strange cases could have been caused by hazardous water currents, but the government decided to carry out the traditional rites to calm the fears of the local workers anyway. This footage comes from Marginal Media on YouTube, who explained that he'd captured the footage while diving in the Great Barrier Reef. He'd been testing out an underwater camera when he spotted the creature, only he didn't realize what he'd filmed until later when reviewing the footage on his laptop. At the time, he'd been too busy futzing with the camera, but felt something coming from behind him. He managed to shoot it, but at the time, while underwater with, low visibility like this, he figured what he'd seen was just a normal fish. Now, he was adamant that what he'd filmed was not from a movie or anything like that, and that he hadn't filmed it in a controlled environment like a swimming pool. He says it's 100% genuine, so believe him or not. In 1809, a woman named Miss McKay from the town of Stiuso in Scotland claimed to have witnessed a real mermaid while walking along the beach. According to her account, in the Kentish Gazette newspaper, she had an up-close view of the creature and described it in great detail, saying, "The face seemed plump and round, the eyes and nose were small, and the former were of light grey color, and the mouth was large, and from the shape of the jawbone, which seemed straight, the face looked short." She also said that the mermaid's forehead, nose, and chin were white, but the side of the face was a bright pink. The mermaid's hair, which Miss McKay described as thick and long, with a, quote, grey, oily cast, appeared to be a challenge for the creature as the waves often threw it over its face. She said the creature seemed bothered by this, frequently using both its hands to push the hair back and rub its throat, almost as if trying to remove any dirt from the water. On June 4, 1857, two Scottish sailors, John Williamson and John Cameron, reported spotting a strange creature off the coast of Britain. While at sea, they saw a creature in the water that they described as resembling a woman. According to their account, "We distinctly saw an object about 6 yards distant from us in the shape of a woman, with full breast, dark complexion, comely face, and fine hair hanging in ringlets over the neck and shoulders." It sounds like these guys were out of the water a little too long with nothing but each other. Anyway, they described the creature as being submerged up to its middle, with its head above the water, gazing at them and even shaking its head, going on to write, "The weather being fine, we had a full view of it, and that for 3 or 4 minutes." And finally, in 1967, near Main Islands in British Columbia, something strange happened. A ferry filled with tourists spotted a blonde-haired mermaid-like creature sitting on the beach, eating a fish. One witness even described her as attractive with dimples. To top it off, a photo was taken showing a woman with blonde hair and the lower half of a porpoise. Later that week, another mermaid sighting apparently occurred, but by then, skepticism was growing and a lot of people understandably started dismissing the sightings as hoaxes. Charles White, owner of the Undersea Gardens, a ship doubling as an underwater aquarium, offered a $25,000 reward for the mermaid's capture. He even promised room and board, plus special combs for the mermaid's comfort, so quite an odd offer, but he was desperate to prove that she was real. Unfortunately, after a few weeks, the story lost steam and the mermaid sightings faded into local legend. What you're looking at here is a newly discovered creature. Again, news about this one just came out the other day. In the Monterey Canyon off California, marine biologist Bruce Robison made a discovery back in 2000. While exploring with robotic vehicles, he came across a strange gelatinous blob with a giant hood, finger-like projections, and colorful internal organs. Fast forward nearly 25 years, and Robison, along with colleague Stephen Haddock, which is a great name for someone who studies fish, they have finally solved the mystery. They've identified this bizarre creature as a brand new type of nudibranch, or sea slug. Now, unlike other sea slugs that crawl along the ocean floor though, this one floats. Looks a lot more like a jellyfish. Even more astonishing, this new nudibranch can jet backward by expelling water from its hood. The hood, as it turns out, is like a Venus flytrap, capable of expanding and contracting to trap its prey. The creature is also bioluminescent and has both male and female reproductive organs. A pretty fascinating little creature. These are recently discovered octopus species. Roughly 2 miles beneath the surface of the Pacific Ocean near Costa Rica, scientists found 4 brand new species of octopus during expeditions in June and December of last year. It all started when researchers spotted pink octopus hatchlings coming out from their eggs at a place known as El Dorado Hill. Jorge Cortez Nunez, a researcher from the University of Costa Rica, said it was unexpected to find so many species of octopus in a small area, first, and second, at 3,000 meters depth. In June, researchers using a remotely operated vehicle named Sebastian found 2 octopus nurseries around hydrothermal springs on the sea floor. They discovered that these octopuses seemed to prefer the warm waters from the vents, which helps shorten their long incubation period. The warm water gives the eggs a better chance of surviving in the cold, dark depths. One of the new species was even given an unofficial nickname, the Dorado octopus, after the spot where it was found. The species has short arms and small eyes, similar to the pearl octopus found off California. The other species had bigger eyes and longer arms. The 4th species is especially mysterious, with bumpy pale skin and a strange row of suckers on each arm. In total, about 310 deep-sea octopus specimens were collected. What you're looking at here is a recently discovered species of fish in China. You'll notice that it doesn't have eyes. They kind of look like raw chicken cutlets or something else that I can't really describe on here. And those dark patches that you see, those are its internal organs. Deep in an underground river in southern China, scientists found these blind pink fish with no eyes. They were swimming in the dark depths of a cave system in Guangxi when researchers first encountered them during surveys between 2019 and 2024. They were on the hunt for Chinese karst loaches, but quickly realized that this fish didn't match any known species. After studying it, the team confirmed that they had discovered a new species. This is the overly complicated scientific name on screen now, so I'll use the nickname Dachshund Chinese karst loach. These tiny fish are only about an inch long and have elongated bodies with no scales. They also have wide heads, narrow mouths, and whisker-like thingies on their heads, but again, no eyes. Researchers believe this species, like others in the area, lives in deep caves with underground rivers and is rarely seen by people. In November of last year, anglers off the coast of Pakistan reeled in a strange catch, a quote, torpedo-shaped predator with teeth on its tongue. At first they thought it was a regular fish, but researchers Sherkan Panwara and Imtiaz Kashani soon realized they'd actually found something new. And after examining these fish in the lab, they discovered not one, but 2 new species. The first was Brachycentron blotchy, or the blotchy cobia. These predators are about 3 feet long, weigh around 8 pounds, and have small eyes, pointed snouts, and tiny teeth on their jaws, the roof of their mouths, and yes, even their tongues. Inside their stomachs, they found a mix of small fish, crustaceans, and cephalopods. Second species, Brachycentron marquiensis, or the macron cobia, is smaller, about 2.5 feet long, and weighs about 6 pounds. It has a short, pointed head, small teeth, and a greenish coloring with a gray band running along its side. Its stomach contained mostly digested material and some crab parts. How's this for an animal name? The night-armored catfish. Pretty cool, but does it live up to its name? Well, this is one right here. Divers in northern Brazil were exploring the Xingju River, hoping to find some Asaku preto, a thorny black fish often sold in the aquarium trade. Well, it turns out these fish hadn't been documented by science yet. After teaming up with local fishermen and digging through museum collections, scientists realized that this was a brand new species which they named Pseudacanthicus nictos, or the night-armored catfish. These fish can grow up to 10 inches long and have completely black eyes, forked teeth, and their bodies are covered in armor-like plates and thorny spikes. Living in the murky depths of the river, they're usually found around submerged logs, sometimes as deep as 65 feet. As you could probably tell, they're carnivores, feeding on small aquatic animals. They're also very territorial. The males can get very aggressive, especially when sharing space with other males. Off the coast of Belize, anglers unknowingly caught a new species of shark between 2016 and 2019. First they thought they'd just landed another hammerhead, but something about the shark's unique shovel-shaped heads made scientists take a closer look. And after analyzing the shark's body shape, skeleton, and DNA, researchers realized these were part of a completely new species, the shovelbill shark. These small sharks, measuring up to 3 feet 4 inches long, have these very unique, flat, shovel-looking heads. They're found in coastal waters, estuaries, coral reefs, and seagrass beds from Belize all the way to Brazil. They're often caught by anglers, and experts warn that they may already be highly threatened. As co-author of the study, Demian Chapman said, "It is tragic that we have only just recognized that this species exists, and we are already running against the clock to prevent its extinction." Yeah, that is very sad, especially because these sharks are kind of cute, you know? Off the coast of Saudi Arabia, researchers exploring coral reefs discovered this tiny, really upset-looking fish, and honestly, I think if I looked like this, I would also be in a pretty bad mood all the time. While diving in the Red Sea, they released clove oil into an underwater cave to sedate the fish inside, and a small dark red goby floated to the surface. At first, they weren't sure what species it was, and after several sightings and a few more catches, they figured out why. This was not a species they'd ever seen before. This little fish, only about half an inch long, had a severely curved mouth that gave it this sort of grumpy look. Researchers named it the grumpy dwarf goby because of this permanently unhappy looking facial expression. The fish is incredibly rare, with only 10 specimens found during extensive collections along the Saudi Arabian coast, said the researchers. They live in small caves, rocky overhangs, or crevices about 32 to 100 feet below the surface. Again, in the caves of southern China, researchers discovered a fish which they'd named Liu's cave loach, a new species swimming through heavily polluted water. The creatures caught the attention of scientists visiting the area in 2023. Spelled out for you here is their scientific name, but again, they're also called Liu's cave loach for short. They can grow up to 2.5 inches long. They have elongated bodies covered in tiny scales with bright yellow fins. Their snouts are lined with whiskers, almost like a catfish, and their eyes have a yellowish hue. They live in underground rivers and cave pools, but don't show the usual traits of cave-dwelling species. They were also found breeding in a cave pond, despite the water being heavily polluted from nearby sugar factories and duck farms. So far, Liu's cave loaches have only been found in the caves of Yifeng District, Guangxi, a province in southern China near the Vietnam border. Deep beneath the surface of the ocean, researchers have discovered 3 brand new species of sea stars living in some of the most remote and bizarre environments on Earth. The sea stars were found thousands of feet below the surface at methane seeps in underwater valleys using remote-controlled vehicles during surveys between 2003 and 2018. One of the new species showing up on screen in text right now because I don't have a week to learn how to pronounce that. Anyway, it was discovered off the coast of Costa Rica about 3,200 feet down. With flower-like patterns, small plates on its back, these creatures move along the seafloor using tube feet that extend down each arm. Another species, Chimonostella davidalani, also found in Costa Rica, looks similar but has thorny, elongated spines along the edge of its body. The third species, Chimonostella lorisae, has short spines covered in thick skin. And interestingly, Interestingly, all mature specimens looked identical. These deep sea stars seem to live around stuff that sinks to the bottom of the ocean, like sunken wood, which gives them shelter and food. And researchers still aren't sure if the sea stars eat only the wood or if they have other food sources down there. Well, this thing looks creepy. Earlier this year, a team of researchers from China set out on an expedition to the northwestern Pacific Ocean to explore the depths around the Caroline Plate, an area off the coast of the Philippines. They weren't diving themselves, but instead used an underwater robot to explore the area and collect tiny creatures from the ocean floor. And when the robot pulled up a sample from a seamount, among the tiny critters they found was a pregnant amphipod, a type of shrimp-like creature that's just a few millimeters long. But this wasn't like any amphipod they'd ever seen. This was a brand new species, now been dubbed Elusive carolinus. It's an interesting but again very creepy looking creature. Good thing it's so small. The eyes in particular were noted as being large and very well pigmented, which helped it stand out among the other species that live in these deep waters. And here's the really interesting part. When the researchers looked inside its body, they found 9 baby amphipods growing inside her. This footage here was captured in 2015, a never before seen species of squid. So a group of researchers from the Monterey Bay Aquarium Research Institute, Guillermo Helmholtz Center for Ocean Research Kiel, and the University of South Florida teamed up for an expedition in the Gulf of California off Mexico's west coast. Using a remotely operated vehicle, the team was able to dive as deep as 8,000 feet without ever leaving the surface and without disturbing the creature's environment. The team managed to capture a large squid on camera, but soon they noticed something strange about this one. The squid was carrying dozens of giant eggs, around 30 to 40 of them, each about half an inch across. Now, squids of the species they thought this mother was, called gonatids, usually carry eggs that are only about a fifth of an inch in diameter, so these were much bigger. They'd never seen eggs this large in any gonatid squid before, and there's no other squid known to carry eggs of this size. So the researchers figured there was a very good chance they'd discovered a brand new species altogether. Pictured here is a brand new species of fish found in Africa. Earlier this year in Zambia, a strange creature was spotted swimming through a river, heading straight for a bridge. Scientists pulled the creature from the water, at first having no idea what they just found, while it turned out they discovered a brand new species. The team had been in the middle of a project studying a group of fish called nanocharax, more commonly known as darters. They were looking at preserved specimens collected from rivers in South Africa when something odd started to stand out. The fish from a few specific rivers, mostly caught in 2005, had a distinct pattern that was different from the usual darters they were used to. These fish had a unique scale pattern and a banded coloring that immediately caught the researchers' attention. And after further investigation, they realized that they'd uncovered a completely new species dubbed Nanocharax skeltoni, or Skelton's darter fish. They decided to name the species after Paul Harvey Skelton, a renowned professor at the South African Institute for Aquatic Biodiversity. A study came out this past April about a brand new species of jellyfish discovered off the coast of Florida, pictured here. Peter Schuchert and Richard Collins carried out 91 nighttime scuba dives near Palm Beach over the course of years, and they found some pretty cool stuff, like, just some never before seen jellyfish, for example. After photographing the creatures and capturing 2 of them, they took a closer look and realized they'd found a new species which was soon dubbed Zancleopsis grandis, or the large Zancleopsis jellyfish. These things are just over an inch tall with tentacles stretching more than 2 inches in length. The body itself has a long, narrow shape that shifts as the jellyfish moves through the water. The researchers named it grandis because of the relatively large size and the big bulbs on its tentacles. And just like other jellyfish, Zancleopsis grandis uses jet propulsion to move. It sucks in water and then squirts it back out through a small opening, propelling itself forward through the water. Kinda crazy that these new things were found in Florida. As Collins put it, part of the work we are doing is to demonstrate and document the amazing oceanic biodiversity here in Florida. Florida waters are well studied relative to most of the world's oceans, and yet there is still so much to learn and discover. And yeah, that is crazy because Florida, right? And then you got all this vast water over so much of the earth. Like, who knows what crazy stuff could be out there. Now, this is the first and only piece of footage ever captured of a living genus of squid called this. Just earlier this year, the Schmidt Ocean Institute led a team of oceanographers on an expedition to some of the remotest parts of the southeastern Pacific Ocean. During their month-long mission, they came across 20 never-before-seen species and another 80 that were observed in this part of the ocean for the first time. These squids have only ever been seen on the surface, i.e. they've been brought up in nets, dead. We've never seen one alive swimming around in its natural habitat, so this was pretty amazing to see. And there haven't even been that many specimens of these creatures either. It's such a rare genus that we've only had like a few specimens, and a lot of them came from the late 1800s. Sea cucumbers don't really sound all that scary, but I mean, just look at this one. This is what's called a brown-ringed sea cucumber, and it was just discovered. Scientists on a submarine were exploring the South China Sea when they spotted this small, reddish sea creature. It didn't quite look like anything they'd seen before, and as it turns out, it wasn't anything they'd seen before. It was found during a series of dives between 2018 and 2023, using a manned submersible. When the team surfaced and had a chance to study the creature, which had something like 20 tentacles and over 70 tube feet, they realized that they'd uncovered a new animal and gave it this crazy name that, again, I can't even begin to pronounce. AKA the brown-ringed sea cucumber, though. This new species of sea cucumber can grow to about 8 inches long and around 2 inches wide, and this wasn't all they found either. Yanlu Zhao and Haibin Zhang, part of the research team, also discovered 2 more new species of sea cucumber on the same expedition. Next up, we have another story that came out this past April about a new creature discovered off the southern tip of China. Just what is this thing? An ancient wood carving? Well, no, it's actually the shell of a living animal. A research team from China was exploring a deep sea area called the Haima Cold Seep off the coast of Hainan Island when their underwater robot picked up something from the sea floor. It was a shell, and at first the researchers didn't really think much of it, but once they took a closer look, they were like, well, actually, what exactly is this thing? The shell belonged to a type of mollusk known for living in extreme environments, like cold seeps. These are special areas on the seafloor where chemicals like methane and hydrogen sulfide leak up from the Earth's crust, creating this chemically rich water that only very specific life forms can survive in. This weird shell was just over 4 inches long and had a, quote, robust and rectangular shape. The mollusk's foot, the part that sticks out from the shell when it wants to move around, was described as large with an oval sole. But it was really the shape of the shell that made this thing so unique. It's the fact that it's rectangular. Other species' shells are usually curved inward on the ends. Just look at how gorgeous this snail is. On the coastlines of Japan, a tiny new species of sea creature has been found. Hiroshi Fukuda, a researcher and associate professor at Okayama University, first came across these rare snails over 30 years ago when he was still a student. They were actually relatively well known in Japan, but had never been formally documented until last year. Fukuda studied dozens of these snails and ended up naming them this. And luckily, it has a much easier to pronounce nickname, the strange dwarf snail. These snails are tiny, measuring less than 1/10 of an inch long, and Fukuda described these snails as bizarre. These things are small, but they move around quickly, crawling in step-like movements. Fukuda wrote in his paper that they're usually found crawling on muddy walls of earthworm and crab burrows, which might be why they were overlooked for such a long time. This strange-looking animal was discovered in an underwater cave. A team of researchers recently discovered a brand new species of hermit crab in a dark underwater cave in Japan, about 100 feet from the entrance. The 3-person team found this tiny critter in just about 3 feet of water. After carefully examining the male specimen, they realized they had come across a new species. This is its name, also called this. Not even the alternate name is easy to say. This new species is incredibly small though, measuring less than 1 centimeter long. Aw, that's cute. What really set it apart from other hermit crabs were its claws. They were described as strongly unequal and dissimilar. The right claw is moderately slender, the left claw is much smaller, only about half the size of the right one. And this last thing looks like it just hurts. There's like little spines and spikes on it. In March of 2021, researchers took a deep dive into the South China Sea using a manned submersible. During one of their dives, they came across a large crab sitting on some coral. They captured the creature and brought it back to study. Until then, this was a never-before documented species, which was later dubbed Gordonopsis mazupo. Finally, a scientific name that I can actually get my lips around. But they're also known as Mazu's porter crab. This new species is considered pretty big for a crab. Its body is about 1.2 inches long, with legs stretching more than 3.5 inches. When you include its legs, the crab measures over 8 inches across in total. Its claws are especially interesting, described as blade-like. The researchers named it Gordonopsis mazupo after Mazu, the Chinese goddess or grandmother of the sea. And so far, only one of these things has ever been found. The blue-ringed octopus is one of the most fascinating but terrifying creatures in the ocean. There are 4 known species of these octopuses, and they all share one thing in common. They are highly venomous and can kill a human in just a matter of minutes. The venom they carry contains tetrodotoxin, a neurotoxin that is 1,000 times more potent than cyanide. Even more frightening is that there's no anti-venom to counteract the effects, making a bite from this octopus potentially fatal. Tetrodotoxin is spread throughout the octopus's body, not just in its venom glands, which is what makes these creatures both poisonous and venomous. The blue-ringed octopus is typically found in tropical and subtropical waters of the Indian and Pacific Oceans. They get their name from those bright blue rings on their bodies, which only appear when the octopus feels threatened or is about to unleash its deadly venom. What's especially terrifying about this species is that their bites are often painless, so you might not even know you've been bitten, but the venom works quickly, paralyzing the body and often leading to respiratory failure. The effects can be rapid, with death occurring anywhere from 24 hours to just 20 minutes after the toxin enters the body. Cone snails are fascinating creatures, and while over 1,000 species exist, there's one species in particular that you just don't want to get near: the geography cone snail. These mollusks are predatory, using specialized venom-filled teeth to paralyze their prey, which is usually small fish, invertebrates, or other snails. The geography cone snail is dangerous though. It can grow up to 6 inches or 15 centimeters long, and its venom contains more than 10,000 active compounds, which are powerful enough to paralyze and even kill humans. A sting from a geography cone snail can cause respiratory paralysis and death if not treated immediately. The venom attacks the nervous system and can lead to suffocation. Over the past 30 years, about 15 people have died from geography cone snails. These stings are stealthy and fast too. Their harpoon-like teeth strike so quickly that most people don't even realize they've been stung until it's too late. When it comes to marine creatures with the potential to kill, few are as feared as the box jellyfish. These creatures are famous for their venom, which can cause paralysis, heart failure, and even death within minutes. Box jellyfish are especially dangerous in regions like northern Australia and Southeast Asia, where they're found in large numbers. The Australian box jellyfish has tentacles that can reach up to 10 feet or 3 meters long, and their bodies can grow up to 12 inches or 30 centimeters in diameter. Just one sting can inject a massive amount of venom into a victim's body. It can paralyze a person almost instantly, and if enough venom is delivered, it can lead to heart failure. There are over 50 known species of box jellyfish, but another, one of the most feared, is the irukandji jellyfish. These ones are much smaller, under an inch, but that's kind of what makes them so scary. Their venom is potent and can cause what's called irukandji syndrome, symptoms of which are intense pain, muscle cramping, high heart rate, and BLOOD pressure, along with fluid in the lungs. It can cause life-threatening heart complications. In Australia alone, between 50 and 100 people are hospitalized each year with irukandji syndrome, and the number of box jellyfish-related deaths, though hard to track, may be much higher than reported. The beaked sea snake is another terrifying sea creature found off the coasts of India, Australia, Africa, and the Arabian Sea. This species is considered one of the most venomous sea snakes in the world. It's part of a group of 64 species of sea snake, but the beaked sea snake stands out for its aggressive nature and incredibly potent venom. This snake's venom is so powerful that it's 8 times more toxic than that of a cobra. A mere 1.5 milligrams of its venom can kill a human. A full dose can kill up to 22. The venom contains a strong neurotoxin that causes paralysis, including paralysis of the diaphragm, which can lead to respiratory failure. Though bites from sea snakes are rare, researchers are especially wary of the beaked sea snake because it is known to be more aggressive. Most sea snake bites happen when fishers try to disentangle them from their nets. Stonefish are some of the most well-camouflaged creatures in the ocean, making them fascinating but terrifying. These fish blend in so perfectly with their surroundings, whether it's rock, coral, or the seabed, it's almost impossible to spot them. And that's precisely what makes them so dangerous. They remain perfectly still, waiting for prey to pass by, and when the moment comes, they strike, ambushing and swallowing their prey whole. But it's not just their hunting skills that makes a stonefish so terrifying. The venom in their dorsal spines is released when the fish is disturbed. If you happen to step on one, well, let's just say you'll probably regret it. Stonefish stings are said to be excruciatingly painful and cause intense swelling in the affected limb within minutes. If the sting isn't treated, it can lead to necrosis and, in some cases, even death. Luckily, fatalities are rare, and immediate treatments like heat immersion, which helps to neutralize the venom, and anti-venom can help save lives. But no wonder scientists are more hesitant to study these creatures in the wild, given the risk of encountering one while out in the ocean. The pufferfish or blowfish is another sea creature with a deadly surprise. When threatened, the fish inflates itself, making it much harder for predators to swallow. Some pufferfish species even have spikes that protrude when inflated, but what makes the pufferfish so dangerous isn't the inflated body or the spines, it's the potent neurotoxin they carry inside their bodies. Tetrodotoxin is at least 1,200 times more toxic than cyanide. The toxin is concentrated in the fish's internal organs and skin, and even a small amount can be deadly. In fact, just one pufferfish can kill up to 30 adult humans. The fish's toxicity makes it highly unappealing to most predators, but in Japan, it's actually considered a delicacy. Fugu is a dish that's carefully prepared by licensed chefs who are trained to remove the toxic parts of the fish, but mistakes can happen, and when they do, the results can be fatal. Before Japan's licensing system, there were numerous deaths every year from improperly prepared fugu. Thanks to the licensing system, though, fatalities have gone down, but there's still the occasional case of food poisoning, often when people try to catch and prepare pufferfish on their own. The Titan triggerfish. Marine biologist Selena McMillan described being chased by one of these things, saying it was one of the scariest moments of her career. The Titan triggerfish is a large, colorful species of triggerfish found in coral reefs of the Indo-Pacific. These fish are known for their powerful jaws and large, sharp teeth, which are well suited for crushing hard-shelled prey like crustaceans and sea urchins. Triggerfish's teeth are unique because they're straight but incredibly thin, which makes them razor sharp. Despite their delicate appearance, they're surprisingly strong and resistant to damage. These fish are highly territorial, especially during their breeding season. They create and fiercely defend nesting sites on the ocean floor. Divers and snorkelers who may venture too close to these nesting areas may provoke an aggressive response from the triggerfish. They've been known to attack intruders, including humans, to protect their nests. They can also reach over 2 feet or 60 centimeters in length and are found in pretty shallow waters. Viperfish live in the deep, dark waters of the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans, usually between 200 and 5,000 feet below the surface. They're not big, but they're definitely fierce. And what makes them terrifying, aside from how damn ugly they are, is the glow they emit from their body. This bioluminescent light is like a built-in lure to attract other fish, tricking them into getting close enough for the viperfish to snap its jaws shut on them. Even though it's not massive, the viperfish is a brutal predator, and scientists are fascinated by these things, but a little scared of studying it because it lives in some of the most extreme depths, and getting close enough to study it also means diving into some pretty dangerous waters. Next up, we have the Oceanic white-tipped shark. These sharks are adapted to life in the open ocean and are often found far from shore, making encounters with humans pretty rare, and that's probably for the best. In terms of behavior, the Oceanic white-tipped shark has a reputation of being aggressive, especially in situations where it associates humans with potential food sources. And because they live out in the middle of the ocean, they take whatever food they can get. They're opportunistic opportunistic hunters. To make matters worse, these sharks are very unpredictable. They can switch from seemingly calm or indifferent to aggressive at the drop of a hat. The frilled shark looks like it came straight from the age of the dinosaurs. Often called a living fossil, this creature is an ancient species that's been around for over 150 million years. It has a long eel-like body with a head that almost looks like a snake, and its mouth is packed with all these sharp, backward-facing teeth. The frilled shark can grow up to 6.5 feet long, but the most terrifying thing about it is its feeding style. It's able to lunge forward and swallow prey whole using its long, needle-like teeth to trap it. It hangs out in deep waters, often between 200 and 500 feet below the surface. Scientists rarely get a chance to study them up close. The deep, dark waters they live in are hard to reach, and any research that involves these sharks comes with serious risks. Getting a good look at a frilled shark in its natural habitat is a dangerous undertaking. Because of that, there's still a lot we don't know about this eerie, prehistoric predator.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the U-28 creature. During World War I, on a day that defied all logic, the German submarine U-28 sank the British steamer SS Iberian off the coast of Ireland. As the crew watched the ship disappear beneath the waves, an underwater explosion suddenly blasted a colossal creature into the air. This wasn't a figment of weary sailors' imaginations. The creature resembled a giant crocodile about 60 feet long, complete with 4 limbs and a long, pointed tail. For a fleeting 10 to 15 seconds, the stunned crew stood in awe as this marine behemoth arced above the sea before vanishing into the depths. The captain's account, published years later in 1935, sparked controversy due to the lack of corroborating evidence and the decades-long silence. But whether myth or reality, his story adds a thrilling chapter to the tales of unbelievable sea monsters that sailors swore were real. Could the oceans still hide such mysteries? In our number 9 spot today, we have the Gloucester sea serpent. Back in the summer of 1817, in the quiet town of Gloucester, Massachusetts, it was buzzing with tales that would make any sailor's hair stand on end. Hundreds of fishermen, sailors, and townsfolk claimed they saw a massive sea serpent slithering through the harbor's waters. This wasn't just a fish story. The creature was said to be over 100 feet long, sporting a series of humps and a snake-like head that looked oddly like a mix between a turtle and a horse, which I'm not really sure what that would look like. It moved with a graceful yet eerie serpentine motion and was even spotted coiled up at times. The excitement and fear were so real that the Linnean Society of New England jumped in, forming a committee to get to the bottom of it. They collected eyewitness accounts and even examined what they thought was a baby sea serpent, which unfortunately just turned out to be a deformed black snake. Despite the setback, the Gloucester sea serpent became one of the most well-documented sea monster sightings in American history. So, were all of these folks just seeing things, or was there really something colossal lurking beneath the waves? In our number 8 spot today, we have the HMS Plumper Sea Serpent. In 1857, the crew of the HMS Plumper, led by Captain George Henry Richards, had an encounter that would etch itself into maritime legend. While charting the waters off Vancouver Island, British Columbia, sailors spotted something extraordinary slicing through the waves. It was an enormous creature, estimated to be a staggering 100 feet long, with a head resembling a dog's and large, unsettling eyes that seemed to observe them just as keenly. Humps rose along its massive back as it moved swiftly against the current, defying everything they knew about sea creatures. The sight was so compelling that Captain Richards documented it in his official logs, and local newspapers quickly picked up the story. This wasn't just sailors' lore whispered over grog. It was a well-recorded event that added a thrilling chapter to sea serpent tales along the Pacific Northwest coast. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Valhalla sea serpent. In 1905, while sailing off the coast of Brazil aboard the yacht Valhalla, naturalists Edmund Meade Waldo and Michael J. Nicol experienced a moment that felt like stepping into a living legend. They spotted an unusual creature cutting through the water. A large fin rose about 6 feet above the waves, and atop that, a long neck extended another 8 feet into the air. The animal moved steadily, its mysterious form captivating the two men as it glided silently before disappearing after a few minutes. What makes this sighting particularly compelling is who these observers were. Both Meade Waldo and Nicol were respected fellows of the Zoological Society of London. Their detailed account was published in the Proceedings of the Zoological Society of London, igniting widespread discussions about the unknown marvels lurking beneath the ocean's surface. Could this have been a real-life sea serpent? A creature sailors had whispered about for centuries? In our number 6 spot today, we have the Monongahela sea serpent. In 1852, the American clipper ship Monongahela, under the command of Captain John Meny, became the center of one of the most astonishing sea tales ever recounted. While sailing through the remote stretches of the South Pacific, the crew reportedly harpooned and killed an enormous sea serpent. This wasn't just any sea creature. The beast was said to be over 100 feet long, with a head resembling an alligator and a body cloaked in glistening scales. The sailors managed to secure the massive carcass alongside their ship, likely imagining the sensation it would cause back home. But destiny took a dramatic twist. Before they could reach port, a fierce storm rolled in, and with it, their colossal catch was swept back into the abyss. News of their incredible encounter hit the newspapers, stirring up a mix of excitement and doubt. Lacking any physical proof, many people questioned the veracity of their story, suggesting it might have been an oversized sea snake or perhaps just an exaggerated fisherman's yarn. Nonetheless, the tale of the sea serpent remains one of the most intriguing accounts of unbelievable sea monsters that old sailors claimed were real. Who knows? Maybe the ocean still guards secrets that are yet to surface. In our number 5 spot today, we have Captain George Drever's sea serpent. In 1875, Captain George Drever of the bark Pauline found himself at the center of one of the most gripping sea monster tales ever recorded. On July 8th, while navigating the vast expanse of the South Atlantic, Captain Drever and his crew witnessed an extraordinary battle unfolding on the ocean's surface. A colossal creature with a long, eel-like body stretching about 30 feet or 9 meters, and a large head topped with 2 dorsal fins, was entwined around a massive whale. The mysterious beast coiled itself tightly as the whale thrashed violently, sending waves crashing and hearts racing aboard the Pauline. The sheer intensity of the struggle left the crew in awe, and Captain Drever didn't let the moment slip into obscurity. He penned a detailed report and even sketched the creature, with his account later published in the Zoologist Journal. While modern interpretations suggest they might have just witnessed a giant squid engaging the whale, misidentified due to the distance and the tumultuous conditions, the vividness of Drever's description keeps the debate alive. Was it a misunderstood encounter or a genuine sea serpent? Either way, this remarkable incident adds a thrilling chapter to the lore of unbelievable sea monsters. In our number 4 spot today, we have the USS Stein incident. In 1978, the USS Stein, a Knox-class frigate of the US Navy, was cruising through the Pacific Ocean when something extraordinary happened. The ship's sonar system began malfunctioning, and when the crew investigated, they found the sonar dome, the protective cover beneath the ship, had been seriously damaged. Technicians were baffled to discover the dome was covered in long, sharp scratches with with hooked, claw-like structures embedded in the rubber coating. These weren't marks from rocks or man-made objects. They seemed almost alive. Experts speculated that a giant squid, possibly a species larger than any previously recorded, had attacked the sonar dome, perhaps mistaking it for a rival or potential prey. This incident provided some of the most compelling physical evidence of encounters with massive, rarely seen marine creatures, and suggested that giant squids might be far more aggressive than anyone had thought. Could the depths of the ocean be hiding creatures even more mysterious and colossal than we have ever imagined? In our number 3 spot today, we have the Alactin sea serpent. In 1861, the crew of the French naval ship Alactin experienced something straight out of a sailor's legend. While navigating the waters off the coast of Tenerife in the Canary Islands, they spotted a massive creature surfacing nearby. It looked like a giant squid, estimated to be about 25 feet or 7.6 meters long, a beast many thought only existed in myths. The sailors, filled with a mix of fear and excitement, sprang into action. They hurled harpoons and opened fire, determined to capture this elusive titan of the deep. Despite their efforts, the creature slipped away, disappearing beneath the waves and leaving them empty-handed but forever changed. The captain didn't let the encounter fade into obscurity. He submitted a detailed report to the French Academy of Sciences. The incident became one of the first recorded encounters with a giant squid, helping to shift scientific opinion towards accepting that these legendary creatures were, in fact, very real. In our number 2 spot today, we have the HMS Herald and the sea serpent. In 1857, the crew of the HMS Herald was charting the waters of the North Pacific near the Aleutian Islands when they experienced something that would make even the most seasoned sailor's heart skip a beat. Under the command of Captain Henry Mangles Denham, officers and crew, including the ship's naturalist, Berthold Seaman, they spotted an enormous sea creature breaking the surface of the calm, glassy water. This wasn't a mere glimpse. Conditions were perfect for observation. The creature was described as a gigantic serpent with a head resembling an oversized sea lion, complete with large, expressive eyes that seemed to study the ship just as intently as it was being watched. Its body stretched an estimated 60 feet or 18 meters long, undulating through the water with incredible speed and agility. At one point, it raised its head several feet above the waves, giving the uncanny impression of curiosity. The sighting was meticulously recorded in the ship's log and later detailed in Seaman's published works, adding a hefty dose of credibility to their account. This extraordinary encounter didn't just add another tale to sea serpent lore, it spurred genuine interest in marine exploration and the study of cryptozoology. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have the St. Augustine monster. In 1896, the peaceful sands of St. Augustine Beach in Florida became the stage for a maritime mystery that would captivate the nation. 2 young boys, Herbert Coles and Dunham Corbett, came across a massive carcass washed ashore, a discovery that was anything but ordinary. This enormous, unidentified mass stretched about 18 feet or 5.5 meters long and weighed an estimated 5 tons. It had a rubbery, fibrous texture and seemed to sport multiple arms or tentacles, leading excited locals to dub it the giant octopus. Intrigued, Dr. DeWitt Webb, founder of the St. Augustine Historical Society and Institute of Science, examined the bizarre find. He took samples and sent them off to the Smithsonian Institution, where initial examinations by Professor Addison Emery Verrill suggested it could be the remains of a giant squid or octopus. The possibility of a real-life sea monster set imaginations ablaze. However, skepticism grew over time due to the lack of definitive anatomical features. In 1971 and again in 1995, advanced analyses revealed that the mysterious carcass was likely decomposed whale blubber, specifically from a sperm whale. Despite the scientific explanation, the St. Augustine monster became one of the most most famous globster cases, a term for unidentified organic masses that wash up on shores. This incident not only fueled public fascination with sea monsters, but also highlighted how the ocean's secrets can blur the line between myth and reality.
Starting off this countdown, we have coelacanth. What's confusing about these fish isn't their name. It's the fact that everyone thought that they went extinct alongside the dinosaurs. Then millions of years later, they were rediscovered. These dudes have the most famous comeback story of all time. So in the 19th century, scientists discovered a fossil of this fish. This fossil was over 410 million years old. They thought that they went extinct over 66 million years ago. So it shocked scientists in 1938 when they were rediscovered off of the coast of South Africa. But they did have some new features thanks to evolution. Now the fish has 4 fins that move more like limbs than fins. Theory goes that maybe they were going to become a land-dwelling amphibian, and then they kinda just changed their mind. I know that's not how evolution works, but it's the easiest way to describe it. So yeah, here's a creature that used to rule the world alongside dinosaurs. In our 9th spot today, we have Nautilus. This is an ancient mollusk that has been around for 500 million years. In fact, they have been around before Pangea was even fully formed. Now, originally there were 10,000 different species, but now only a few are left and are at risk of extinction. That's because of us. We are over harvesting them, and on top of that, they are slow at reproducing. They need to be left alone right now because they run the risk of extinction. It's kinda sad once you think about it. Like, they survived for hundreds of millions of years and only now start to die thanks to humans. Coming in at number 8, we have the horseshoe crab. Now, what's trippy is that despite their name, they are not crabs. In fact, they are more closely related to spiders or scorpions. Isn't that weird? Now, these bad boys are considered one of evolution's ultimate survivors. That's because they date back to 450 million years, meaning they survived 5 mass extinctions. Now, these guys can grow anywhere from 18 to 19 inches, from head to tail. Males grow a little less in size, only being 14 to 15 inches. Still, that's pretty big. The horseshoe crab consists of 3 parts. They got a front shell, a back shell, and a tail. Now, you may be looking at this tail and you're like, whoa, what the hell? No, that thing can sting me and then kill me. False. Horseshoe crabs, although creepy looking, are harmless, but they do have eyes everywhere. They have 10 in total, and that freaks me out. In our 7th spot today, we have the goblin shark. Now, if you've seen my other video on sea creatures, then you know how much I hate this guy. It literally gives me the creeps, and I'll show you why in a second. Now, the goblin shark has actually been declared a living fossil, and that's due to the fact that it was thought to have gone extinct millions of years ago. That was until 1891, when a goblin shark was spotted off the coast of Japan. Researchers realized that the shark was indeed still alive, and in fact, it barely changed over time, hence why it's considered a living fossil. So these creatures can grow 12 feet long and can weigh up to 460 pounds. But in 2000, they found a giant goblin shark that was 20 feet long. So now researchers say that they have no real idea about how big they can truly get. Now, these things have the creepiest looking appearance, hence why I'm not the biggest fan of them. Plus, they have this weird ligament thing in their jaw that makes it so that they can extend their mouth out and snatch up their prey. Plus, their mouths launch out really fast. That's also why its mouth area just looks so creepy. In our 6th spot today, we have the lamprey. Has anyone here watched a series of Unfortunate Events? You know, the movie with Jim Carrey, not the TV show. Well, you know that scene where they're on the lake and the giant leeches start attacking their boat? Well, lamprey look exactly like those giant leeches. These things look like they're a mix between a snake, an eel, and a leech. They can be anywhere from 5 to 40 inches in length, and they attack fish by sucking the life out of them. They're literally like a vampire. Now wait until you see their mouth. They have 11 or 12 rows of teeth that wrap around in their mouth like a ring, and once they latch onto their victim, they use a barbed tongue to pierce the fish and then just drain the blood out of them. They also excrete a blood thinner to prevent blood clotting. What's crazy is that these creatures have survived 4 major extinctions in their 360 million year existence. That is wild. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the frilled shark. Now, this is another pretty creepy looking shark. In fact, it doesn't even look like a shark. It looks like an eel mixed with a snake mixed with a shark. But fun fact, these sharks are actually the cousins of the great white shark and the hammerhead shark. Now, Now, these bad boys have been around for 80 million years. Pretty insane, right? They live in the dark abyss of the deep sea and have rarely changed over the years. Now, they were given the name of the frilled shark because of the frilly appearance of their gills. They also are kind of similar to snakes because they have hinged jaws that allow them to eat big creatures whole. But you don't need to worry, okay? They live deep in the ocean and they don't really show themselves to humans. In our fourth spot today, we have the wobbegong shark. Again, another shark that doesn't really look like a shark. And that's because this shark has camouflage techniques, and it likes to blend in with algae-covered rocks or the ocean floor. And they do a good job with it too, with their flattened bodies and speckled patterns on their bodies. Now, these dudes have been around since 11 million years ago. But don't worry, these sharks don't attack. They'll leave you alone if you leave them alone. The only time they have attacked is when a diver got too close or someone accidentally stepped on one. But no fatalities have ever been reported. In our third spot, we have the Greenland shark. This shark is said to be one of the longest lived vertebrate animals. The shark is also said to be one of the world's largest carnivores and one of the most successful predators in the Arctic waters. These massive sharks are about the same size as a great white shark and eat crustaceans along with things that have fallen off of the ice shelf above. Also, apparently, these creepy worm-like parasites like to attach themselves to these sharks' eyes and literally eat their eyes out. Okay, I think that's scarier than the shark itself. But yeah, the Greenland shark is still alive today. They lived for at least 250 years. One of them lived for 400 years. Some may live to be 500. Isn't that crazy? For reference, a great white shark lives for only 70 years. So they got nothing on the Greenland sharks. Coming in at number 2, we have a pygmy right whale. Now, these whales have been around for about 23 million years. In fact, they are considered one of the rarest species of whales. Around 2 million years ago, they were thought to have gone extinct. That was until 2012 when they were rediscovered. Besides that mystery, there's another one, which is scientists don't know where exactly this whale evolved from. There's been much debate over this for a while. What we do know though is that these whales like cool waters, which is what puts them at risk because of climate change. Scientists are worried the rising ocean temperatures will wipe them out for good. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the whale shark. Here's another name that does not match the creature because this animal is not a whale at all. It's not even a whale-shark hybrid. The only reason it's called a whale shark is because of its size. It currently holds many records for size in the animal kingdom. It is the largest shark and largest living non-mammalian creature. And it's been around for at least 26 million years. However, now they are endangered. Now when you think of sharks, you think that they love to eat fish, and if they get a whiff of blood, they'll just go crazy. Well, whale sharks aren't like that at all. In fact, they are filter feeders, meaning they eat plankton, fish eggs, decaying plants, etc. So these sharks are pretty harmless. In fact, an aquarium in Atlanta lets you swim with them. In case that was on your bucket list, there you go.
Kicking off the list at number 10, Arctidus simus. Lions, tigers, and Arctidus simus, oh my. This one's really scary. Also known as the giant short-faced bear, the Arctidus simus went extinct only a mere 11,000 years ago. Yeah, it was once the fastest running bear that ever existed. So already, we have trouble. That's a terrifying fact. Its legs were much longer than today's bears. These were like lanky, fast bears. If the giant short-faced bear stood up on its hind legs, it would be around 13 feet tall. This thing was a beast. Today's bears also have different shaped toes. Today they have pigeon toes, more or less, but back then these guys had straight, forward-facing feet. So they were athletes, pretty much. Giant athletes with quick feet. Paleobiologists conclude that short-faced bears ate only meat. And given the fact that it was 11,000 years ago, I feel very badly for humans that found it. Well, with its powerful nose, realistically it would have found them. Yeah, the giant short-faced bear, I'm gonna say its full name every time. Also, I'm not just gonna say this bear, I'm gonna say the giant short-faced bear every time. The giant short-faced bear needed around 35 pounds of meat every day to survive. That's a lot of food. That's a lot of porridge. Yeah, I hope my porridge isn't too hot. Please God, don't let him burn his bare lips on my porridge. He's gonna eat me. These things are scary, honestly. Like, they're always like scary photos, like drawings of it too. Well, obviously there's no photos. Number 9, Spinosaurus. Yes, another Jurassic Park star, and rightfully so. Look at this thing. The largest carnivorous dinosaur of all time, even bigger than a T-Rex. Can you imagine that? 93 million years ago, they stopped terrorizing the lands of what is now Egypt and Morocco. And if you didn't already guess, its name translates to spine lizard, hence the spine stuff. And that spine was quite long. It was its main feature, you know? The Spinosaurus would measure up to 60 feet long, and aside for its back, one of the most notable features is its 6-foot long head. It's got a massive head, man. Its mouth was similar to a crocodile's with straight, sharp teeth, not curved teeth. Straight, like a vampire. These straight teeth could stab right through anything, any fish, just a big skewer for a tooth, no problem. Paleontologists from the University of Pennsylvania believe that this guy used to swim as well. Nice, even scarier. Because where the first Spinosaurus fossils were found, well, that used to be by Haria Oasis in Egypt, which was a massive swamp. Water or land, I want nothing to do with this guy. Next. Number 8, Mega Piranha. Don't have to say much about this one. What if I just said Mega Piranha and then it was just the next point? You're like, oh, fair. These things, for starters, were much bigger than today's piranhas, obviously, hence their name. They came in at around 1 meter long. They ruled the waters around Argentina around 6 million years ago, so skinny dipping probably wasn't a thing. I hope not. Its bite force was 50 times its own weight, and like I said earlier, Mega Piranha, bigger. This thing was huge. It was bigger, it was badder, it was weightier, had more to it. Mega Piranha would be around 30 pounds on average. Its bite can out-chomp Megalodon any day. Any Tuesday. Even today, the word piranha makes people scared, it makes people anxious. As I was writing this, I was like, oh, I wasn't looking. Because our modern day black piranha, although sure it's only, 2 pounds, its razor sharp teeth can still take a chunk out of you. It's still quite dangerous. Yeah, but they didn't mention any of that in 3D Piranha Double D Part 3 or whatever we're watching now. These things are scary. Number 7, Helicoprion. Perhaps one of the weirdest sea creatures to ever exist. 250 million years ago, that is. This thing looks like a shark, but scientists now know that it was related to chimeras, a fish that separated from the shark family 400 million years ago. Yeah, they were like, I don't like this family. I got some things going on in my mouth. See you later. Good. The 25-foot long fish was first discovered by Andrei Zarpinsky in Russia back in 1889. He got the name Helicoprion because it translates to spiral saw. Yeah. In their mouth. Horrible. This guy found teeth fossilized in a spiral formation. What a find. He must have been scratching his head for months. Paleontologists all agree today that this was not part of a fin. It wasn't a wacky spinal cord. This guy wasn't, all goofed up. But rather, it was its teeth. It was teeth coiled up, attached to the lower jaw of the fish, and its grasp was the same power roughly to that of a crocodile. Yeah. That's the worst thing I could imagine. So new teeth would form, and in turn these spirals would get longer and curlier. Adult fish would have 4 full rotations in their mouths. Rotations of teeth, that's horrible. 4 rows of teeth. Can you imagine? I thought wisdom teeth sucked. Ugh. Number 6, Liopleurodon. Translating to smooth-sided teeth. Nice, sounds a little fun, dare I say. The Liopleurodon was anything but a smooth sailor. It was a massive marine reptile from the Mesozoic era, first discovered in the 1800s. It was excavated in France back in 1873. All they got was 3 teeth, and that was enough. But when it was featured in 1999's Walking with Dinosaurs, the BBC series, it was shown as this massive 80-foot long pliosaur. But they were basing that size off of its skull, which we now know is just much larger than the rest of its body. We got too excited. The thing's literally a bobblehead of a dinosaur, and we're like, yeah, it was bigger, maybe, I don't know. Pliosaurs were the apex predators in Europe. 160 million years ago, most of it was covered in shallow water, so this guy would use its 4 flipper feet to stalk its prey. And researchers believe its snout was a key asset in hunting. He would just sniff for you. They didn't have any gills, so they did need to come up for air every now and then. Again, imagine this big head just appearing out of nowhere and just sniffing you. Going back in. That's Loch Ness Monster for sure. Number 5, Megalodon. Of course we have to mention him. Louis Agassiz discovered the Megalodon shark for the first time back in 1843. Yes, the Megalodon was once very real. Louis was a Swiss-born American naturalist and geologist. He discovered some amazing details around glacier activity and extinct fish. Historically, this guy is an OG. He's made quite the impact. He's brilliant. But one of those extinct fish he discovered back in the mid-1800s was the Meg, aka the tooth shark. This was long before Jason Statham was born, so we had no idea what to do with this guy. Megalodons could be found pretty much everywhere in the world except for Antarctica. It favored warm oceans, but similarly to a great white shark, it generates heat when it moves, so the Meg could literally have survived in most places on Earth. It's that big, it would just warm itself up. The largest recorded Megalodon came in at 59 feet, around the same length as a bowling alley. A bowling alley with 7-foot wide jaws and 5 rows of razor sharp teeth. Nice. Nope. Number 4. Elasmosaurus. First discovered in 1868, a military doctor in Kansas found this creature's fossil, passed it along to American paleontologist Edward Cope, who named the plesiosaur. Its neck contained 71 vertebrae. I think I have like 56. I'm pretty close. Not as long, but definitely in the same family, for sure, as this guy. It was super long, which came in handy during those deep dinner dives. When I say long, the Elasmosaurus was around 50 feet in length, so it didn't need to go that close to the surface to get air. He just kind of leaned back and he was good. There's people out there that believe the Loch Ness Monster is just one of these things still swimming around. Honestly, as far as things go, that's probably the best guess. It's probably some sort of version of that, if it exists. Its teeth were sharp enough to eat anything that could fit into its mouth. And just 2 years ago, scientists have unearthed the largest known Elasmosaurus. This thing has been sitting there since the Cretaceous period waiting for us. And I'll be honest, I sure hope we don't find any more, because one water dragon is enough for me. I believe. Great. Stop. Number 3. Direwolves. We'll go a little nicer before we get to our last haunting too. If you're from South Westeros, this one might hit close to home. Around 10,000 years ago, pretty recently, direwolves were still a thing. They're pretty common. And if you watch Game of Thrones, you're probably nodding your head right now. It's pretty fun, right? You're getting hyped, or you're getting tissues, either way, spoilers. Canis dirus, aka direwolves, these beasts were a lot bigger than our average gray wolf. It wasn't like a mega wolf with 3 heads or anything, but it still did weigh a lot more. It was eating good as well. Their jaws were much stronger back in the day, so they could chomp their way through pretty much anyone and anything. Believe it or not, direwolves would actually hunt down and eat horses. Yeah, after studying their teeth, that was their go-to snack. But they were always easy to catch, I guess. If you're a wolf, they're no problem. Fast versus fast, I would hate to see that. That'd be so scary. Currently, if you're in the market for seeing 400 direwolf skulls yourself, weird, but here you go. You gotta head to the Page Museum in Southern California. They found hundreds of thousands of skulls in tar pits. So, if you don't believe in these things, here you go, history. To thousands of skulls ought to change your mind. Number 2, a T-Rex. Tiny arms, massive head, loud scream. Yeah, we've all seen Jurassic Park, or at least one of the 6 movies they have now. And in real life, T-Rexes were probably a lot worse, to be honest. Around 70 million years ago, this big fella would roam what is now North America. And on average, it would be 20 feet tall, 8 tons, stretched a haunting 40 feet long. And yeah, it had tiny arms, and we can roast them for that, sure. But they clearly didn't need them now, did they? No. They're Old English, buddy. They would just headbutt anything. Look at these things. Its jaws are of course the main bread and butter here. 50 to 60 razor sharp serrated teeth around 9 inches long would definitely help it digest 500 pounds of meat in one serving. Henry Fairfield Osborn, the president of the American Museum of Natural History, named the behemoth back in 1905. The name Tyrannosaurus rex comes from the Greek and Latin words meaning tyrant lizard king. Yep, I'd say he nailed it. Pretty good. Godzilla has a nice ring, but tyrant lizard king? That's pretty groovy. That's way better. I'm gonna change my Xbox name to that. Tyrant Lizard King 69. Number 1, Carnotaurus. Okay, remember that animated Disney movie just called Dinosaur? That movie that had this guy as the main villain? Yeah, that was way too scary for kids. I'm 27 now, I'll say it with full confidence. That scene was too scary. Cried in the theaters, I remember it. I still remember it. That and Ice Age weirdly got me, I don't know. Carnotaurus, they roamed the earth 69 million years ago. They were around the same size as a T-Rex, they were around 29 feet long, but they're nicknamed meat-eating bulls, so they were scarier. They would run at around 25 miles an hour. They're one of the fastest and largest moving theropods to ever live, ever, and its arms were even smaller than a T-Rex. But again, before you laugh, before you go, haha, little arm guy, that didn't matter for the meat-eating bull, because this guy has horns, just like the devil. Yeah, you were gonna say the devil. Yeah, he's oddly similar. The red skin, it's the whole shebang. The Carnotaurus was discovered in 1984 by Jose Bonaparte in Argentina. They've only discovered 1 skeleton of these things, so hopefully there weren't too many of these sprinting around. Hopefully, but again, as that movie depicted, it was a horrible time to live. Thanks Disney. All their dinosaur movies, eh? They're really nice now. The dinosaur movies are nice. Back in the day, we had this guy as a villain. Yeah, we didn't have Arlo, the good dinosaur. Now I'm upset.
Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the splendid poison frog. The splendid poison frog is a species of poison dart frog that was once abundant and thriving and could be found in its habitat in western Panama. Researchers believed that a citrid fungus outbreak in their habitat led to a rapid decline of the species. In fact, this fungus is responsible for the deaths of a mass amount of amphibian species, as the number of amphibians has been dropping at an alarming rate in the last few decades. Because of the fact that these were a species of frog frog that was once an extremely popular pet, it is thought that there might be unknown specimens which are still alive in captivity, but unfortunately none have been found in the wild, and there aren't currently any that exist in zoos or research collections. The last time one of these frogs was recorded was in 1992, their fungus outbreak occurred in 1996, and as of 2020 they have been listed as an extinct species. In our number 9 spot today we have the moa. These animals were giant flightless birds that could be found in New Zealand. They were so tall that they reached around 12 feet and they weighed more than 500 pounds. I'm just saying, there are smaller birds that exist today that are honestly pretty terrifying. A 12-foot tall 500-pound bird is actually a nightmare. While these guys had little predators before human settlement arrived, their populations quickly declined after they began being hunted by humans. It is said that actually within 100 years of human settlement in the area, their extinction occurred. It is said that the moa have close relatives that still exist in South America, and scientists are working to find a way to see if these relatives carry the moa gene, and if so, could they be used to bring back this species of giant birds. In our number 8 spot today we have the western black rhinoceros. The western black rhino was a subspecies of black rhinoceros, and they made their home in the savanna of sub-Saharan Africa. These guys were unfortunately the victims of poaching, which led to their rapid decline. Isn't it a bit ironic? People got so greedy trying to kill these incredible animals so that they could make money, and now they can't make any money off of them because they killed them all. What a genius business plan, and just genuinely good people. Anyways, this species first originated around 7 to 8 million years ago, and for most of the 1900s, it was the highest population of rhino species. That all changed, however, as from 1970 to 1992, the population of black rhinos in general decreased by 96%. Other than poachers, another main culprit for the decline was farmers who killed the animals to protect their crops that were placed close to rhino territories. The last sighting of a western black rhinoceros was in 2006 in Cameroon's northern province, and sadly the subspecies was officially declared extinct in 2011. In our number 7 spot today we have the Caspian tiger. During their time on this planet, Caspian tigers were an animal that was native to eastern Turkey, northern Iran, Mesopotamia, the Caucasus around the Caspian Sea, Central Asia to northern Afghanistan, as well as in western China. They were everywhere. Until the Middle Ages, these tigers could also be found in Ukraine and southern Russia, but of course this is a list of extinct animals, so what led to their extinction? Well, it is believed that the demise of this tiger population started with the Russian colonization of Turkestan during the late 19th century. During this time, the tigers were being killed by large parties of sportsmen as well as military personnel, and they didn't just hunt the tigers, but they also began hunting large numbers of the tiger's main food source. This, plus the fact that much of their home was being turned into agricultural developments, and you have a perfect recipe for causing the decline of a species. As of 2003, the species was officially declared extinct. Some scientists want to try to bring them back by introducing a very close relatives of these tigers into the lands that Caspian tigers once used to roam, where they expect it to adapt. In our number 6 spot today we have the Morian viviparous tree snail. This was a species of air-breathing tropical land snails that were endemic to French Polynesia. This extinction was caused by a chain of events that happened after something humans did. The African land snail was introduced into Tahiti in 1967 as a food source, but it quickly escaped and began to destroy crops. Biologists wanted to attempt to control the African land snail, so they decided to introduce the rosy wolf snail to the area in 1977. This went haywire as the rosy wolf snail didn't just control the population of African land snails, but rather started to eradicate all of the snails that were native to the area, which of course includes our little friend, the Morian viviparous tree snail. So this one little introduction led to them becoming totally extinct in the wild. These snails do still exist in captivity, and there have been attempts to re-release them into the wild, but the rosy wolf snail continues to prey upon them, so at this point it looks like they will never be able to return to the wild, which is very sad. It sucks that the intention really was to help, but things just did not go according to plan at all. In our number 5 spot today we have aurochs. These guys are an extinct species of cattle which are thought to be the ancestors of modern domestic cattle. These guys were absolutely massive, one of the largest herbivores that existed during the Holocene actually. It is said that their populations began to decline during the late Holocene, which is due to habitat loss as well as hunting. It is believed that the last individual died in 1627 in a forest in Poland. Many of these creatures are believed to be depicted in cave paintings and even Bronze Age figurines. There are some modern cattle species that carry some auroch DNA, so there are certain teams of scientists scientists who, since 2009, have been selectively breeding cattle in hopes of being able to bring back these long gone species. In our number 4 spot today, we have the woolly rhinoceros. We talked about another kind of rhino before, but now we have a woolly one. I didn't even know these ones used to exist. These guys were a species that was quite common in Europe and Asia during the Pleistocene epoch, and they survived up until the end of the last glacial period. These guys were an animal that is seen depicted in cave paintings as well, and we have even discovered their bones and remains that were mummified and preserved in permafrost. These guys were stocky and they had a thick woolly coat which helped them survive in the cold tundra environment. In 2020, there was actually one of the best preserved remains of one of these animals ever found, which has prompted questions about possibly reviving the species. In our number 3 spot today, we have the elephant bird. Apparently birds used to be massive, because here we have another species of now extinct giant flightless birds. These guys are said to have once lived in Madagascar, and it is thought that they went extinct somewhere around 1000 to 1200 AD, likely as a result of human activity. It is said that these guys stood to be about 10 feet tall and that they could reach insane weights of 730 kilograms, which would make them the world's heaviest bird. I'm just saying, I'm glad they were flightless. Several of the bones of these birds have been found with tool marks, which means that for years these birds were able to coexist with humans. In the end, researchers are working to see if the remains we have found will be enough to possibly bring this species back into our modern world, and if so, what would the implications be? In our number 2 spot today, we have the Tasmanian tiger. These guys are actually less like tigers that we are used to, and they're actually marsupials, but not really like the marsupials we know today either. These guys are a carnivorous marsupial that was native to Australia mainland in the islands of Tasmania and New Guinea. These guys had anatomy and adaptations that bared similarities to both tigers and wolves despite being unrelated. They were certainly an apex predator at their time, and as of now, their closest ancestors that are still surviving are the Tasmanian devil and the Noombat. Because of these living relatives, it is thought that scientists might be able to bring back these creatures by selecting certain parts of their DNA. In our number 1 spot today, we have the woolly mammoth. We would certainly be missing a very important animal on this list today if we didn't include the woolly mammoth. These guys were of course a species of mammoth, and in fact they were one of the last in line of mammoth species. Because of the fact that in both Alaska and Siberia there were frozen carcasses discovered, they're actually one of the most well-studied extinct creatures. Exactly why or how they were driven to extinction is widely debated, and another thing people like to debate is whether or not we should try and bring them back. There was a genome project completed in 2015, and since then it has been proposed that the species could be revived through a few different means, but no one has yet taken the leap. What do you guys think about reviving extinct animals? Are we on board? Are we terrified? Let me know down below in the comments.